school. You notice here that you can get up to $4,000 under the TEACH grant. There are some basic eligibility criteria as highlighted on this screen, but the thing that most students and aid administrators alike don't like about the TEACH grant is that if you don't fulfill your obligation to teach, you get this grant for 4 years, and you decide, oh, I don't really want to go and teach, well, it converts to a student loan. So you'll be repaying a student loan as opposed to no repayment with the grant. Now, is that a bad thing? Well, if you were going to have to borrow a private loan anyway, then it's not such a bad thing if you would have had to borrow some money anyway. But some people call it, the aid community, when they're making fun of it, they call it the groan, because it starts out as a grant, but it could turn to a loan if you don't fulfill your obligation to teach. So if you're interested, read about it. On the FAFSA form, you are presented with the questions that ask, do you want to teach? Are you interested in teaching? So that your school will know, I want to teach, so that they can offer you and begin the process of determining your eligibility for this. So we've talked about grants. Now, the next form of aid is student employment. There are many sources of work study that's out there for you. Notice that work study can go to graduate and undergraduate students. You will be employed on or off campus. In fact, schools have to use a portion of their work study allocation for off-campus employment. Notice, too, that you're paid at least the federal minimum wage rate, and you might work on your campus. You might work for a local agency. Working is good. The history has shown that students who work are more likely to persist and complete college. A lot of kids say, I don't want to work my first year. Well, you'll have to examine yourself academically. How strong are you academically? If you're a good student, working is a good thing. If you're a marginal student and you really need to spend that time studying, think about it. Or consider accepting it, but maybe you want to reduce your award. Again, the history will show that if you work, you're more likely to persist and stay in school. Why? Because when you work and you go to an employer, you're building and connecting with somebody at an institution. You feel a part of that institution, as opposed to going back and sitting in your dorm room after you finished your classes. So once you connect, use the work study program to do that. Just like SELG, the work study is called a campus-based program. Schools get an allocation. They don't get enough work study funds to help all students. They don't get enough from the federal government, that is. But schools will also have their own institutional employment program for which they can assist you. So consider that as an option. This next slide talks about loans. So we have grants, we have employment, and we also have several loan programs to help you pay for college. And I know a lot of families that I dealt with, I don't want a loan. And so they decline it. I don't want a loan, but then they show up at registration and they're short of funds, and guess what? They have to actually go through and apply for the loan. So that's why I said you can check that you want it, put it out there. You can always decline. You can always return it. If it comes to the institution, you have 14 days to say, I want to keep it or send it back to the bank. But it's out there. It's available. You see here we have a Perkins loan program. This Perkins loan is always the better loan because it has some cancellation provisions after many years. And you see here you can get $5,500. We have federal subsidized Stafford loans, unsubsidized Stafford loans, loans for parents. And we're going to talk about them in just a moment, but parents, your parents can borrow. There is a credit check that's required for parents. Now, if the parent is denied based on credit, some students throw their hands up and walk away. Well, don't be, because if your parents are denied, then that means that you can borrow on your own behalf. You can borrow an additional unsubsidized Stafford loan, and as a freshman, that amount is $4,000. So you can borrow an additional $4,000. Notice, too, that parents, you can borrow up to the cost of attendance minus any other financial aid that you might be receiving. And then once you go to grad school, there are Grad Plus loans that are available as well. Unlike grants, grants don't have to be repaid. They're free money. They're a gift to you. Employment is money that you're earning. Loans are just what the name implies. And we have this last reminder here that loans must be repaid. So we do remind you, borrow, but borrow wisely. Well, Cynthia, how much can I borrow? Well, I'm glad you asked. Take a look at this slide. It talks about the Stafford loan limits. Did you know that when you walk into a college this fall or this summer, you may be eligible to borrow $5,500 in your own name as a high school student just getting out of high school? No questions asked. The government will allow you to borrow $5,500. And you notice here, The maximum subsidized is $3,500. What's the difference in subsidized and unsubsidized? And I should have talked about that on the previous screen. With the subsidized loan, the government pays the interest while you're in school. With the unsubsidized loan, you're responsible for the interest, but you can tell the lender that you want to defer it. Now, we talked about all of these programs that the government offers for you. There are some basic eligibility criteria that's on this screen. Notice here that you have to graduate, have a high school diploma or a GED, and I also should have put on here, or have the ability to benefit. So to get financial aid, you must be enrolled in an eligible program. Notice here, be pursuing a degree or certificate or some other recognized credentials. You must be a citizen or an eligible non-citizen. And for any males out in the audience, it is a requirement that you register with Selective Service. If you are not registered, when you complete the FAFSA form, you'll be presented with a question that says, go ahead and register me. We already talked about having a good social security number. And this last bullet says that you must maintain satisfactory academic progress. That is, after completing 2 years, you must have at least a C average. If you don't have a C average, there are some provisions, but let's get you focused on after 2 years of study, you must be making progress towards a degree. Generally, that's a 2.0, but sometimes schools have sliding scales that they will consider maintaining progress, and your GPA is not a 2.0. But you'll need to check with the school for their criteria. Notice also on this slide that you cannot have been convicted of the possession or sale of drugs while receiving federal student aid. So be careful what you're doing right now. The decisions that you make right now do actually affect you when you get ready to go to college. You can't be in default on a student loan. We said that the loans have to be repaid. If you do not repay the student loan when it becomes due, then you go into default on that student loan. And you can't owe a repayment on a federal grant. If we gave you too much grant or you got too much for whatever reason, you have to give it back if you were overpaid on it. And so until you pay it off, if you owe a repayment, then you're not eligible. But, you know, there are ways to work around that as well. How much money would you get? See here, and we're going to wrap this up in just a moment. Your school will take their cost of attendance. They're going to subtract that expected family contribution that's listed on your student aid report to calculate what is called financial need. What is your financial need? How much can I get? We'll be trying to meet your financial need. You notice here we say it's a government formula. This formula has been set by Congress, and so all schools have to comply with it. What's in your cost of attendance? These are the things that are listed on this slide. It varies from school to school. Tuition rates will vary. Room and board rates will vary. Schools have to give you an allowance for books and supplies. What does that mean? We have to estimate how much it's going to cost you with books. That doesn't mean that we give you a check for $1,000, for instance. If we say it estimated it'll cost you $1,000, doesn't mean that you get a check for $1,000. It means that we have to consider that you have to buy books and put it in your allowance, so to speak. Have to give you an allowance for transportation, equipment, computer, childcare costs. All of these things are called your cost of attendance. And on this slide, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time here, but it's used to just kind of illustrate the cost of attendance is not the same depending on what type of institution you'll go to. The private institutions, they can cost as high as $35,000. And your financial need in that case would be $30,000. But public institutions, if you choose to go there, will tend to be a lot lower in cost. And look at this financial need, it would be $13,000. And if you choose to go to a 2-year community college, your cost would be even less. And so that's why we said you might consider choosing a lower cost option. But look at your financial aid package. It will vary from school to school as well, based on your financial need and the school's ability to meet that. So what's the role of the financial aid office? They're going to determine your eligibility for financial aid, send you an award package, and package it and send you an award notification letter. And just being a past aid officer, I just wanted to stress, don't hesitate to call a financial aid office, certainly before you go and pay anybody. And you can give your high school counselors a break as well. Is that right, counselors? Call those financial aid people. That's what they're there for. Help them. Call any institution for which you're going to attend. We're wrapping it up. The student aid on the web. This is just a handy resource here. If you want to find out more for those students, most of you guys now, you're not into this paper handbook, this paper guide, but you can go surf the web, and this is the URL that we give you. That you can go out there at federalstudentaid.gov and find more information about paying for college. We also provide a toll-free number if you get lost, if you have questions. If I don't answer all your questions tonight, if you get home and you start doing it, you have questions, we give you this 1-800-4FED-AID number. There are people there who will actually answer the questions for you to get you through that process.